Welcome back to another impactful episode of the PSTA podcast. I'm Craig King, your host, and I am back with your favorite guest, Patrick Kelly. Patrick, I just got back from Denver, Colorado, and I was surprised that we didn't have any podcast fans in Denver, Colorado. And I was upset because a lot of the attendees were coming from South Carolina, and no one brought up the podcast on their own. Now, once I brought it up, they were interested, but we didn't have any established fans that just brought it up. So.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta reach out past the Mississippi, west of the Mississippi. It's just our weak zone. We got to work on that.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, but anyway, I did not ski. I did go to the ski resort.
Okay, well that's good. That's like skiing without skiing.
But I'm going to put them out there. Dr. Rashad Anderson, who did a stand-up job planning the Mr. Magic retreat, phenomenal. 3 days. However, he failed to let me know that there were snowmobile rentals.
Oh, that would have been cool.
That would have been cool. But
you could have stayed in Columbia and you could have snowed on pollen all weekend. Because
very true.
We have hit that part of the year. One of my students this year is new from Indiana, and she didn't believe me about the pollen, and she and her family have come around. It's a whole different.
It's wild, man. It's wild. But anyway, good to see you, Patrick. Let's jump right into it. So Educator Assistance Act, it's gotten some movement, some momentum, but we also know we're getting close to the only a few legislative days left. So talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, the Educator Assistance Act is in a good position right now. It is scheduled. We are recording this on Monday, March the 24th. It is scheduled for review by the full Senate Education Committee on Wednesday, March 26th. Of course, anything can happen in one of those committee meetings, especially if a member has some amendments they want to work on. But more often than not on the Senate side, when a bill gets a full committee hearing, even if there's some lingering concerns, the individual senator with the concern will just reserve their right to introduce an amendment on the floor for debate. Mm-hmm. So the most likely outcome, but not the guaranteed outcome, is that the bill gets reported from full committee on Wednesday, but then it still has some significant ground to cover before it can get to the governor's desk, and he's pledged that he'll sign the thing. So this week we encouraged PSTA members to reach out to their individual senators. I checked right before I got on the podcast. 43 out of 46 senators have been contacted by PSTA members. I will figure out who the other 3 are, and I'll be sending out targeted messages to members in those areas. But the way the rules of the Senate work is that a single senator with an objection can pretty much freeze a bill. Mm-hmm. There are ways to get around that, but those take some time, and you can only do that for effectively one bill at a time. Yeah. The Senate only has 7 weeks remaining, and a lot of that is going to be tied up in budget deliberations. They're still working through their tort liability insurance reform package that they have been on for 3 weeks now. So the biggest barrier for the Educator Assistance Act would be if a senator contested the bill. That could make it hard to get it done this calendar year. Now, it would still be in play for 2026. It would start the year on the Senate calendar, but the best outcome is for the bill to get uncontested status on the Senate calendar and open it up for debate and potential amendment. So if people are interested in this bill, the best advocacy tool you have right now is to contact your individual senator, call their office, and ask them to support prompt review of the Educator Assistance Act by the South Carolina Senate.
Yeah, and we have struck gold a few times where teachers have been up here for a Hill Day. Anderson won when South Carolina State Teacher of the Year. Braden Wilson was able to talk to the full Education Public Works Committee, House Education. Kershaw School District, Kershaw Teacher Forum was here a couple weeks ago and was able to sit in on the Senate side when they were discussing the Educator Assistance Act. And so while those moments are very crucial and important to getting this across the finish line, we cannot stress the importance of you reaching out individually to your senator to let them know how important this is.
And being bold to say it, because one other Hill Day shout out that bears referencing here is part of why we know that the biggest barrier the Educator Assistance Act faces this year is likely time. It's the limited number of days, is because last week we were hosting teaching fellows at the South Carolina State House, and Senate Education Chair Greg Hembry graciously gave his time to talk with the fellows. And one of the fellows, shout out to Mackenzie Lott down at USC Aiken,
Right.
she had the boldness to ask the senator, what's the status of the Educator Assistance Act? And he was very gracious in giving a very thorough response in terms of how they've worked through the policy and how the bill has evolved. And then he just point blank said, the biggest challenge this year is going to be time, because there's only a couple of days left in the session. So shout out to teaching fellows for having the boldness to use their voice in that way. And hopefully all of us current educators can take our marching orders from the pre-service educators that are willing to lean in.
I love that. So, Patrick, thanks for that update on the Educator Assistance Act. Take a look at your land if you need some additional information and some talking points. So I've seen personally some chatter online with makeup days in different districts as a result of Hurricane Helene. So can you talk about Representative Bannister's bill?
Yeah. So last week, the House K-12 subcommittee held a marathon meeting on Wednesday in the morning where they went through 10, 11 bills.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, forgive me if I don't have the count right, but it was a lot. And the last one they took up was Chairman Bannister. Representative Bruce Bannister is the chair of House Ways and Means. He represents Greenville County, and he has introduced a bill to forgive days missed as a result of Hurricane Helene, which obviously is a significant issue because the hurricane shut down entire school districts for multiple weeks. No electricity and no transportation, all the issues that people in the upstate dealt with, and in the Edgefield area as well. So what the bill would do is forgive the days. What the House K-12 subcommittee has amended the bill to do, and they've now reported that to the full education committee, is it would require a district to go through all the existing statutory requirements for making up inclement weather days. So current state law says that a district must have 3 weather makeup days built into their calendar. So the amended version of Mr. Bannister's bill now says you've got to make up your 3 weather days in your calendar. Then the second thing state law says is that the local school board can forgive an additional 3 days. So the bill says you got to have your local board vote for 3 more days. Now we're up to 6. Then current law says the district can petition the State Board of Education to forgive 3 more days. So now we're up to 9. And so what the bill now says is that if a district missed days to Hurricane Helene, they need to go through all 9 days that are currently available under state law, 3 makeup days, and then 6 days that are forgiven either by local board or state board. Then the bill says that the state superintendent could forgive additional days if the district will certify that they are developing a district calendar to avoid such situations in the future. So it's basically saying, okay, we're going to forgive it this time, but in order to get the forgiveness, you have to demonstrate, you being the school district, you have to demonstrate how you will design your district calendar in the future to avoid a similar need in future years. Because let's just be frank, and this came up during the subcommittee hearing, the legislature appropriates funding for 180 days of instruction.
They do.
And we know that days of instruction matter. The Education Oversight Committee released a huge report last week that we still have a chronic absenteeism problem. And lo and behold, students that are chronically absent don't perform well academically compared to their peers. So instructional time matters. It's not invalid to want kids to be in school. So that's kind of the lay of the land on that bill. 9 days can already be taken care of through existing statute. Anything beyond that, the district can petition for it, but they have to demonstrate a plan to avoid similar situations in the future. You know, I mean, the only thing I just add editorially is, you know, Hurricane Helene was really hard to plan for. Yeah. Not a lot of weather models had a massive hurricane ripping through the upstate that never even crossed over our coastal line here in South Carolina.
Absolutely.
But that's where the bill stands.
Okay. And so thank you for that update on that bill, because I've seen a lot of chatter from different teachers and districts about that. So thank you for that update. So you said that meeting had quite a few bills. Any other highlights from that that meeting.
Yeah.
Please don't go through all 12.
Yeah, no, I'm not going through all of them. I'm not doing that to anybody,
Yeah.
Especially our listeners in Colorado, which now we've got. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, no problem.
It was largely a catch-up subcommittee hearing of bills that had passed the House in prior sessions but not made it through the Senate. So there was a bill about computer science, a bill about STEM education. Those have passed the House before. There was a bill about media literacy that did not pass. It has not passed in the past. There was a cursive writing bill to require cursive in grades now 3 through 5 is what the bill was amended to. That's passed the House before. There's a bill to require schools to have cardiac emergency response plans. This is a big push and initiative of the National Football League and the American Heart Association. That has been amended. PSTA has spoken into that in the past, so it's now been reported to the full committee. Probably the one new novel bill that was interesting is a bill to require districts to have mobile panic alert systems. And so some districts in our state already have them. Raptor is a common one.
Is that the one Richland 2?
Richland 2, where I teach in Richland 2, we use Centigich. I can't say it.
Let's go with that.
I'm still kind of bitter that the district adopted a technology platform that I cannot pronounce. Like, they should have realized I'm from the South. I cannot handle GIX at the end of a bill. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's beyond my grammar capacity.
Yeah.
But it's a system that unfortunately a lot of people are familiar with because it's the same system that was used at Appalachian High School in Georgia, where there was the tragic school shooting at the start of the 24-25 school year where 4 students lost their lives. Mm-hmm. It's a badge or a card that a teacher has, and you can click a button, and if you click the button 8 times, it triggers a school-wide lockdown and sirens and messages on clear touch panels and the whole shebang. And everybody that was at Appalachia in the fall pointed to that system as saving lives because of how quickly the school was able to respond to the situation. So the bill would require all districts to have those, which, PSTA was a founding member of the South Carolina Coalition for Safer Schools.
Sure.
We're on board. I will vouch as a Richland 2 employee and the parent of Richland 2 students. I am thankful I'm working in a district that has that resource. I wish that was true of every school in this state. So we testified in favor of the bill, but the one thing we said is the General Assembly has got to put money with it if they're going to mandate it, because whereas a Richland 2 or a Greenville County, somebody with a large local property tax base can afford that recurring cost because it is recurring. It's an annual licensing fee. Yep. Your small rural counties don't have the local tax base to absorb that. So the state's going to have to partner the policy with the appropriation in order to be able to pull this off.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, thank you, Patrick, for that update. And look, you can't really put a price on saving a life, know, and so we hope that our rural districts, if it's going to be mandated, that they receive some support for that.
Absolutely.
I want to wrap up, Patrick. The diversity, equity, inclusion legislation. Mm-hmm. It had a second. I guess it wasn't a hearing because they didn't take testimony last week.
Second committee meeting
last week, and there was an amendment to the bill.
Yeah.
So give you a few moments to talk about that.
Yeah, H 3927. We talked about this on the last podcast. It was a diversity, equity, and inclusion bill that largely lifted from a presidential executive order. And had some really problematic language in it. It would have forbid any program or activity designed with reference to race or sex. And so we talked about Girls on the Run or African American History Month. I mean, reference to race or sex is pretty vague language. The bill also would have forbidden any state entity, including local school districts, from partnering with or contracting with a private business with a DEI policy, which is potentially disqualifies a ton of programs and companies that provide core services to our schools. So what the full committee did last week is they did not take testimony. Representative Tim McGinnis from Horry County, who led prior session work on DEI in the higher ed space, started the meeting by introducing what's called a strike and insert amendment. So what that means is you strike out the entire text of the bill and you insert brand new text. So it's literally introducing a new bill. You're just using the existing bill because it's already in a point in the legislative process that lets you move forward. The strike and insert bill is highly similar to the language that was in the House budget but was ruled out of order 2 weeks ago. It is far less extensive. It is far less comprehensive than the original 3927. Most significantly, it removes the language about prohibiting any activity designed with reference to race or sex. It also removes the contracting prohibition. It still would forbid any government entity, including a school district, from having a DEI office by title. Now, they went out of their way to say you could have an office of belonging, an office of community engagement. You just can't call it an office of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It forbids DEI statements as a condition of employment. It forbids mandatory training, but it takes out the two pieces that we thought were absolutely critically important to remove in order to deliver high-quality instruction to students.
Well, Patrick, I think when we look at that first hearing to hear 64, 65 people testify representing different groups and students, teachers, community members, and not having one person in favor of that bill.
Not a person.
Not one person. I think it was important for the committee to take some action. And some would argue that the bill's not needed at all, if you remove a lot of that. But thanks for that update.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Hill Days this week. We have one Hill Day. We have Fort Mill Schools coming tomorrow. I'm excited to have them come up and for their Hill Day. Patrick, anything else?
No, I just hope your bracket's doing well. It's critically important this time of year.
So I will say my bracket, I am tied for fourth in the bracket that has something on the line.
Nice.
I'm not going to say what that is.
You got something.
I got something on the line.
I stopped being in any bracket pool that had anything of tangible value attached to it during my junior year in college because my roommate and I put together a substantial pool of money for a bracket challenge. I got second to my roommate's girlfriend who picked teams based on the cutest mascot.
That is
and I since that time have called it off because I don't feel like it's good for my mental well-being. It's also just not good for me being a nice human being. So
if you don't remember this, but the last time we did one in the office, I think Tony ended up winning, and she based it off of who had the cutest coach or the team colors or something like that. But she won. But yeah. But anyway, hey, I hope your brackets out there are surviving. Go Cox, and yeah, that's about it, Patrick.
That's it.
It's been another impactful episode of the PSTA podcast. I'm Craig King, your host. I'll see you next time.